Archbishop,
McConaughey.
It's been a while since we've done this.
It's been a while.
And this time the topic is Synod.
And not COVID, thank goodness. Yeah.
You just got back from 5 weeks dealing with Synod.
I did.
5 weeks.
I was away. We started with the meeting of the Canadian bishops, and then we were off to Rome for a full 4 weeks for Synod events.
Before we get, some people are still struggling with the words on this. So in your shortest definition, what would you say is, what is Synod? A
Synod is simply a gathering of people of the church. And so
synodality would be?
It means, they try to use walking together as the people of God.
So that's a good shorthand. Because, I mean, do you find that a lot of people get stuck on that word?
They probably do, because it's not common in sort of Catholic speak.
Yeah.
But a synod, for example, the Second Vatican Council is referred to as a great synod. And in the Eastern Church, of course, they talk about synods all the time. We talked, of course, in Vancouver about synod because we had an archdiocesan synod.
Right.
That ended in 2006.
Was the synod that you attended very much different in format and style or tone?
It was very different from previous meetings of the Synod of Bishops, which were previously they were confined to mostly bishops. A few others had participated, but at this synod there were over 70 lay people and consecrated men and women who participated along with the bishops, on equal footing.
You had people at your own table?
I had people at my own table.
Representing a lot of groups?
At every table, there were about 10 people at a table. And of course, they mixed them so that there were usually people from at least 3 continents, nearly always a religious, and always a woman. I was at a table once with the youngest synod participant from the United States. He was 19 years old.
Wow. Did your table change from
the tables changed about every week.
Oh, okay.
For every topic change, we would change, and we were assigned a table.
Right.
They were wonderfully technology, up to the highest standard. 4 screens, each person with their own tablet, a camera that could pick you up if you were talking to the assembly right away. It was quite sophisticated, the technology.
Now, your days were pretty packed.
The days were very packed.
What was it? Walk us through quickly. What was a day?
We would start at 8:45 with prayer, a form of morning prayer. Then there would be sort of, your general introductions. Then it would vary. Some days it would be nearly all conversation in the small groups. Other times it would be the small groups would report out. There were about 35 of the small groups would report out to the General Assembly. And then there was also time for what were called free interventions, when you would just kind of push your tablet and go onto a screen.
What were some of the key takeaways for you?
Well, the key takeaways, I mean, they are. We published the documents. Well, I guess one of the big takeaways is simply the experience of the universal church, of being with a number of people from the church around the world with different points of view. They're at different places in the life of the church, and to be able to think far more Catholically or universally about the church. And also there were some very interesting things said, and then other things that are kind of commonplace that we know, but it was, often interesting discussion. And what I really liked was the method of spiritual conversation, in which you talk in turn, you're limited, you don't interrupt other people. Then there was always period, there'd be a little bell, there'd be silence. Even after interventions on the floor, maybe after 4 or 5, they would say, now we'll have 3 minutes of silence. And the place would go dead quiet, It's quite amazing.
Is this something we can use at the local level?
It's something we can definitely use as a method at the local level.
And in what ways? What would that look like?
Well, I would think, for example, for when an important decision had to be made in a parish community, that instead of just sort of throwing open the question, folks, what should we do about
X, Y, Z,
X, Y, and Z? Do we need to a new parish center and so on? How are we going to do it? Instead of just allowing people who want to talk, everybody talks. You would have an appropriate scripture reading. Everybody would say their cue and It's usually timed to a 3-minute max, maybe a 4, whatever you would decide.
Yeah.
Then there's silence. And then you go around again, not to repeat what you said, but what did you hear other people say?
Right.
So you have to then, exercise your own listening skills, not just, I want to get back in the argument. Then there's silence again. And then the third time round, there's kind of more open, free debate. But it allows for wide participation, and it puts it in a more, contemplative is maybe a little over the top, but into a more rather prayerful context.
Yeah. And obviously this wouldn't be for every micro decision.
No, it wouldn't be for micro decisions. This is something for significant things. It wouldn't be for, are we going to put Pepsi or Coke?
Yeah. Was there anything unexpected? Did anything surprise you in coming out of the Synod?
I guess one thing that it wasn't exactly a surprise, but that impressed me is really the how Catholic the Church is. I mean, I was at tables with people from East Timor, from the Ivory Coast, from South Africa, mostly because they did it for languages, so it was from the English-speaking world.
Right.
There were also groups in Italian, French, and Spanish.
Right.
So there were the 4 languages that were commonly used. You could use
translators.
Translators, of course.
Yeah. Did you hear, we had the Synod process here in Vancouver, thousands of people participating. We had ours that got synthesized into Western Canada, the
continent, and then to Rome.
But did you recognize some of what we brought in the...
Yes, some of the themes, yes.
Yeah.
We had themes about welcoming, inclusion.
Right.
Those seem to be, in slightly different forms, universal.
Yeah.
We talked about the need for formation. There was a lot of talk about formation at different levels.
Right.
We had some material, a greater role for women in the church that got a lot of play, because in many parts of the church, the role of women is not as developed, as it is here. It always needs more, and so on. So there were where you could recognize themes that appeared universally.
Right. There's bound to be areas of disagreement, and I think even in the synthesis document,
of course
it's highlighted.
Yes, and in the document, the document often says this is going to be referred for further discussion and so on, and you can tell therefore that there was disagreement. There was the question that it's in the document several times about should women be ordained to the diaconate.
Yeah.
There was by no means agreement. It wasn't a question that was dealt with at length, but it came up.
Right.
And when it would come up, people had different ideas about it. That would be probably the most controversial one.
And what happens with those that are is that to be discussed?
Well, everything now, the document has no magisterial status. It will go to the Holy Father, of course, and by general agreement, it is that the second session of the Synod, which is next year, should probably be much more focused on some specific topics.
Okay.
We don't know what those will be yet.
Will you be going back?
People are supposed to go back. It's the same group. There's not a new slate. The general understanding is that a person goes to both sessions.
Right.
Whether that happens, who knows? But that's certainly the understanding.
Some members of the Synod have been going home saying this is supposed to be this type of synodality.
Right.
This should be the modus operandi of the church in some ways, even at the local level.
Yeah, I think what they want to encourage, the big thing behind synodality is participation and communion. It's a call for people to become more engaged in the life of the church. And so to that extent, of course, I think that saying is accurate.
Right. And in a certain sense, that's not new.
Exactly. It's not really new. A lot of the theology, if you read it, it's based on baptism, on the call from baptism to be missionary, to be engaged as priest, prophet, and king, that this is shared by all the faithful. Yeah, exactly. It's not all new.
Yeah. Is there anything from the Synod that you'll be bringing back and thinking that things will change in Vancouver in any particular ways, or?
No, not really. I think the one thing that when I'll talk about it, because I'll have occasion to talk, it'll be to stress a conversation in the spirit.
Right.
How we should be maybe a little more deliberative and certainly more inclusive in who gets involved in making decisions.
Right.
You know, that's a call. I mean, people are very generous, but there are often those who are a little on the sidelines that we don't invite enough in, or,
right,
you know, they're shy. I think it's kind of more in that way in terms of building up communion and participation among folks.
Right. Well, once again, thank you, Archbishop, for this time. We'll be hearing more about the Synod and your experience.
I think you'll be hearing more about the Synod. It was wonderful. I hope you saw some of the pictures.
Yes. Yeah. We saw pictures of you, and
we're all sitting at the table, and the Holy Father's, he's at the same kind of table, except he's a few inches off the ground from the rest of us.
Very good.
Very good. Thanks very much, McConney.